about to listen to the Dr. Dahlia Show. Sassy, stimulating medical talk radio. Any medical advice Dr. Dahlia Wax gives on her show should not be substituted for an actual visit to your medical provider. And now, here's Dr. Dahlia.
All right, we are back on the Dr. Dahlia Show, 1-877-DOC-DALI, 1-877-DOC-DALI. So this week, President Donald Trump has revealed the great healthcare plan. And I'll break it down for you guys. Much of it we've already started to see, where he has told drug companies, you're not going to charge America more than other countries. No, you're going to give us the best rate you're giving developed countries. We're not going to be covering. And meanwhile, you're charging Canada less or Mexico less. So that's a part of it. Also working with pharmaceutical companies to bring down prices such as these weight loss drugs, Wegovy, Zepbound, Ozempic, Mounjaro. But there's some other things that he's adding into this, which is, I think, very, very crucial for our healthcare system. So the Obamacare, the Affordable Care Act, President Trump is now nicknaming the Unaffordable Care Act. And I think the majority of us can agree that the ACA was a cluster and a seventh. There were a couple good things as it pertains to eliminating pre-existing condition exemption or clauses where insurance says, sorry, I don't have to pay, you have asthma. That was BS. That should have never happened. And I do credit Obama, Sebelius, and Pelosi for making sure that was remedied, as well as cover a physical, for crying out loud. I mean, these insurance companies need to cover physicals. Unfortunately, with the ACA, it was thousands of pages of a lot of chunk and pork and sorts of stuff in there that didn't really help patients. And in fact, it ended up hurting them, where now people's mammograms are more expensive than they ever were because, well, we cover your screening mammogram, but you need a little bit more than that, so we don't have to cover that. And so many of our bills actually went up. Our colonoscopies went from one price to almost triple with Obamacare because they're like, well, we pay for the screen it going in, but if you have a polyp or if we have to do anything on its way out, we don't pay for it. So prices went up. People did lose their doctor. Deductibles were ridiculous. And the insurance companies were not incentivized to lower their prices because they just kept getting money in from the government. So the call to repeal and replace Obamacare never happened. I mean, there was the call to do it, but it was never implemented, executed. Nobody could repeal and replace Obamacare because the way the law was written, it would be like cutting the red wire. It would implode our healthcare system. So what has happened is many flaws of it have come to light, such as, okay, guys, we need to, earmark, billions of more dollars, for the subsidies to go to insurance companies. And many people are like, I'm getting a plan with a high deductible. I have high out-of-pocket expense. It's not covering the medicine I want. And we're fighting over how many billions of dollars to give to insurance companies. So one plan of Trump and the GOP is, well, what if Obamacare will be set to demise if we don't keep giving money to the insurance companies? And then the insurance companies, if they want you to buy their plan, they're going to have to, come up with better healthcare plans. They're going to have to lower their deductible. And you all know how the deductible works. If you have a $10,000 deductible, like I do on my insurance or whatever it is now, that means the insurance doesn't have to pay till you have come out of pocket 10 grand. And that's not including your premiums. You're like, well, I'm already spending 12 to 20 grand a year on the premiums. That doesn't count. You have had to have gone to the doctor after the insurance discounts, put out 10 grand of your own money, and then we'll start to pay. Well, December 31st comes along. You maybe only met a few grand of your deductible, and then it starts all over. It's the biggest scam. It is such a scam. And I think Americans are tired of it. So what is the great healthcare plan that Trump has? So, he wants to, first and foremost, rather than money going to the insurance companies, you guys get money. That money could go into HSAs. That money could go into you're using it to buy the insurance you want. So he says the government is going to pay the money directly to you. It goes to you, and then you take the money and buy your own health care. The big insurance companies lose, and the people of the country win. That's his quote. He says the proposal also locks in the massive discount on prescription drugs. He says that his administration is achieving through our most favored nation's drug pricing agreement. It'll bring down drug prices 80, 90% in some cases. He says numbers that nobody's ever heard of before. I hope this happens. This should have happened decades ago. I don't understand why Americans are paying more. I get asked that all the time. Why are our drugs more expensive than in Mexico? Because we're paying it. Well, finally, we have an administration saying, not going to happen. Not going to happen. And Obama could have done that too. For some reason, it wasn't in the ACA. Then your prescription drugs will come down. He's going to have the TrumpRx.gov. It's supposed to be launched this month. I don't think it's up yet. If it is, we're obviously going to let you know. And then they are going to stop the subsidies and shall we say, incentivizing insurance companies to raise their rates, just like we did with student loans. Once you told the colleges, we're going to increase student loan amounts, well, then the colleges raise the rates. So he's going to reverse that. And then he wants to also have a transparency where he says any hospital or insurer who accepts Medicare or Medicaid has to prominently post all prices of their place of business so that you are never surprised and you can easily shop for a better deal or better care. Now, even though the ACA had some transparency where you had to, with the ACA, if you were going to crank up your rates, you had to prove why. And then I remember Blue Cross Blue Shield had increased their rates, and I remember they were one of the first ones quickly reviewed, and they said, oh, no, it's all valid. Because when you look at the staff, when you look at the costs, so this is a little different transparency. This is, I have choices of multiple hospitals in my plan. If I need an appendectomy, what's it going to cost at this hospital versus another? They should be able to tell you. I mean, mechanics should do the same thing. How many times have we brought in our car thinking it's only going to be a $200 job and then it turns out to be $800? The transparency of prices, with that wiggle room of just in case you have a complication, that's paramount. Because what the great healthcare plan, from what I see, is doing is giving more power to the patient, which is something I support. So let's hope it works. 1-877-Doc-Dolly. Don't go away. Hey guys, it's Dr. Dahlia. Fantasy football season is coming, but sadly, too many of you are taking the bench while the country takes part in one of the most exciting and lucrative industries out there. Don't know how to play? Well, huddle up and listen. Paul Kalikas and I have written a fantasy football pocket guide for beginners. This book walks you through the basics and shows you how simple and lucrative joining or creating a fantasy football team can be. Read our fantasy football pocket guide for beginners found on Amazon or follow the links on X and Facebook. That's Fantasy Football Pocket Guides for Beginners. Don't be left out.
At Hot Shot Secret, we share the science behind common diesel problems. For example,
diesel fuel cetane levels.
The cetane rating in diesel fuel is 42 to 45. Most diesel engines operate more efficiently with a cetane rating of 48 to 50. One treatment of Hot Shot Secret Diesel Extreme will raise your cetane 7 points, increase fuel economy, and improve cold starts.
Hot Shot Secret Diesel Extreme is available nationwide at truck stops, fine farm and auto stores, and online at hotshotsecret.com. Hot Shot Secret, powered by science.
Have you ever thought you'd like to buy and sell houses but didn't know how or where to get the money? My name is Ron LeGrand, and over the past 40 years, I've bought over 3,000 houses without using my money or credit and taught thousands to do the same. Today, even in a virtual environment, we buy nice houses in nice neighborhoods using no banks, realtors, contractors, or other costly entanglements, and build huge cash flow and wealth without the hassle of tenants, all without credit and little or no money. You don't need a license or experience, and I'll show you exactly how it's done. Text FREE to 99799, and I'll send you my free training. I promise you I'll change the way you think about real estate and open the door to a new lifestyle that doesn't involve risk or rehabs and can quickly replace your current income. Text FREE to 99799, and let me show you how to take your life back and build cash flow and wealth from your home. That's FREE to 99799. Again, FREE to 99799.
We are back on the Dr. Dahlia Show. Thank you all for tuning in. 1-877-Dr. 1-877-DOCDALI. Big thanks to Talk Media Network for making the show happen. Big thanks to Daniel, our producer. And big thanks to you all for tuning in. We really do appreciate it. Don't forget to follow us on Twitter or X at Dr. Dahlia, Facebook, The Dr. Dahlia Show, and on YouTube, click like and subscribe. So this headline caught my eye. Most LA third graders are below basic reading level. Now, this is, I believe, in California. Oh, I'm sorry, in LA. Duh. Okay, sorry. Really, LA's in California. I was born there. But they say more than half of third graders in LA's public schools are failing to read at grade level. Apparently, these findings were revealed, according to the New York Post, in a 5-hour presentation from the Board of Education, which outlined the group's upcoming strategy. Now, third grade is a huge benchmark because third grade was the time where we started to advance them from basic reading skills to then reading comprehension to writing to critical thinking. And according to this study from the Los Angeles Unified School District, 43.6% of third grade students are reading at grade level. Statewide, the number is 44.2%. Why isn't it 100? Why isn't it 100%? And so while we're looking at what's been happening with Generation Alpha and Generation Z's proficiency shortcomings, we're going to, with this next election, be hearing about universal childcare. Universal childcare. And I look at these two very, closely linked. And if we as society can't figure out how to teach our kids and keep them proficient and make sure they're eating healthy and not getting bullied and getting them physically fit, are we equipped to now also take on universal child care? So a lot of people are watching what's happening in New York City because Zohran Mamdani has promised universal child care. And it got everybody excited. They voted for him. And I really do believe that some people who voted for him were like, he's not going to make this happen. But at least it's somebody bringing it up. And let's see what he does. I'm intrigued. Okay, as an experiment, let's just see what a democratic socialist can do. But when you look at the practicality of it, now I don't have proficiency results, academic proficiency results in New York. But from what I'm understanding, what's happening in LA is pretty similar to what we're seeing, in most metropolitan areas, across the nation. And so to execute universal child care, well, one is you need facilities. You need plenty of facilities. Number two is you need plenty of staff. You need to have trained staff. And by trained staff, if you're doing universal child care, are we just talking infants? Are we talking the toddlers 2 to 3 years old? Talking pre-K? Are we talking about those who need after-school babysitting because they work? Where does my 6 or 7-year-old child go? So the people that do daycare still have to be academicians at some degree and some level. And if a city or state or nation doesn't have their act together when it comes from regular academic proficiency, then how are they going to do universal child care? Now, another concern is the vetting. Now, I live in an area where, sadly, I'm hearing every couple months that somebody had a sexual relationship with a student or somebody assaulted a student. So the first thing that comes to my mind is who's going to be vetting and ensuring that these individuals are one, with no criminal history, and two, adequate enough to be able to do. And it's interesting because if you don't know what a daycare worker is, people are underestimating the quality of education a daycare worker has or should have, and the quality of work that they provide. People think, well, you have a pulse, you could watch my kid. No, you got to be trained in basic first aid. You got to be trained in infant CPR. You have to be aware of the dangers of kids. You have to identify infectious disease in kids. You have to ensure that child is also going to be nurtured and have a place to grow. You have to be able to nurture a child because they want to be with mommy or daddy or the parent. And so, there's training involved for somebody that is, and so my worry is if Mom Dami wants to, or any other, mayor says, look, this is what we want to offer. Who's doing the vetting? Who's doing the training? And then where is the funding coming from? I think the estimate, we talked about this yesterday, $18 billion. I think New York City is going to need to do universal child care. Where do they get that $18 billion from? Now, one thing New York said they were going to do is, let's say they don't have facilities. And let's say they don't have trained individuals to provide quality childcare. We're not talking about the childcare in Minnesota where they misspelled the sign leering. Okay, their learning center, they didn't even have proper spelling. Okay, now we're talking about, let's say they don't have the facilities, the staff. One thing they have suggested they will do is give you cash to pay your neighbor to watch your kid. So if you're hiring a neighbor or a family member to watch your kid, they'll give you money for that. Now, we're seeing all this fraud in Minnesota. Tell me how there's not going to be fraud in that. I mean, everybody and their mother will say, Mom, come over, and then we could get money. And then we'll get money. So just watch the kids, and we'll give you money. This is, or just say you watch the kid. Where's the checks and balances? You're working at home with the kids. You're saying, oh yeah, I had to hire a babysitter. Where's the proof? Are people getting receipts? There's we'll just have the babysitter give us receipts. Well, the average babysitter takes cash so they don't have to pay taxes. I mean, is anybody thinking all this through? And we still have the problem of, okay, that's all fine and dandy. You guys want to pay for universal child care. What's happening in the schools? Why are our kids failing academically? Now, somebody can say, well, what it is we have many kids where English is a second language. So in these numbers are not English-speaking America-born kids from English-speaking parents. They're individuals who are now coming to the country, becoming citizens, and so but then they could say that but still with math, etc. I mean, they still are able to read. They're still able to. You could still test proficiency, and many of them can still be very proficient, even learning English as a second language. So I just don't think taking on universal child care is we're ready when we're failing in our schools now. Childcare, as I've said before, that was difficult. I mean, I'm coming out of residency, pregnant, having kids, trying to pay off student loans, trying to start a practice. Daycare was expensive. And it is expensive because they have to have insurance. They have to have training. They have to have facilities. They have to have security. I mean, these are things that so it did. I understood why it cost a lot. It sucked. I can't stand that daycare costs that much. But it does, because when you look at what they do, they deserve the pay they get. They're keeping your child safe for you. I mean, yeah, that's going to cost money. So is it the government's job to allow that? Now, one option I brought up years ago during the Great Recession was the government can hire people, have places within the government building where there's daycare, so the parents can still check on their kids, etc. And then they can have a job, they can have daycare, rather than sitting home. Because unfortunately, the average mom or dad is looking at this going, look, I don't make enough to pay for daycare, so it's better for me to just stay home. So I get that people want to get people back to work. And there's so many things the government is doing right now and expanding on. So I'm sure, they could provide especially since we have all this real estate now that people didn't want to come back to work. I mean, we have real estate, we have facilities. I mean, there's a way that they could do this. But the idea that New York has is, you know what, if we don't have the facilities and we can't keep them safe and we can't protect kids from being shot or abused or assaulted, then we'll just give you money to find your own babysitter. Well, I don't think that's universal health childcare. So my recommendation is, one, let's look at the schools and see what needs to be done at the school level. Number two is, even at the preschool level, we need to make sure there's academics being taught. These kids, these 3-year-old, 4-year-olds, they can learn. Many of them. You don't want to push them too hard. But, it just doesn't have to be playtime and finger painting. And there's a lot of programs where they actually start preschool. But once we can perfect the proficiency part and you could convince me that government's running, then I'll consider giving you a baby to watch. 1-877 Dolly. Don't go away.
Looking for a gift that can actually help secure someone's future? It's Mark Falter's new book, Common Sense Income Strategies. It makes the perfect gift for that special someone in your life. Mark has helped thousands of hardworking Americans secure their financial future by using time-tested strategies that continue to create wealth, whether the market is up or down. Strategies that will make perfect sense once you take the time to read this powerful book. Common Sense Income Strategies brings to you what Mark has been teaching in person and talking about on the radio for decades. You've worked too long and too hard not to see the fruits of your labor. To learn how to receive your free copy, call 866-764-2635. That's 866-764-2635. Secure your future with Common Sense Income Strategies by Mark Falter. Again, to learn how to receive your free copy, call 866-764-2635. That's 866-764-2635.
We are back on the Dr. Dahlia Show. Thank you all for tuning in. 1-877 Dr. Dahlia, 1-877 DOCDALI. So I don't have an OnlyFans account. Yes, you're welcome. I knew you would be happy about that. And when I first heard about OnlyFans, I didn't know it was a sex sort of platform. I thought OnlyFans was where, because some doctors were talking about it, going, you know what? I'm going to have a platform where people can talk to Dr. Bob or Dr. Joe. And I mean, now there's everybody, doctor. There's Dr. Dahlia, there's Dr. Oz, Dr. And then they could connect with me. I can make money. And I'm thinking to myself, I go, well, that's really, really cool to have a platform. But I was just so busy. I mean, when your show is syndicated and you have radio affiliates to keep happy and podcasters and all that, you like, I haven't done TikTok because my job is to, one, teach you. Okay, it's not to monetize. It's not to, spread myself all over the place. It's also to ensure that you guys can get the teaching. And so if an affiliate is playing the show and then I'm setting something up that competes with the affiliate, that doesn't help you as a radio listener that wants to turn on the radio and listen. And so I'm podcasted and all that. And so if people want to hear me, they can hear me. And maybe I was lazy, so I never really set anything up. And then I heard that OnlyFans started to be more sexy, where people would do acts, very pornographic acts, that OnlyFans would allow that, and people were getting money from that. In fact, I think there's somebody who made, $96 million? 95. OnlyFans favorite and Tampa resident Sophie Rain earned $95 million between 2023 and 2025. So people are now using OnlyFans as a business. Well, in Florida, apparently one of the gubernatorial candidates is going to tax those earnings, calling it a sin tax. Republican James Fishback has now suggested that there should be a 50% sin tax on OnlyFans earnings. Now, creators, OnlyFans, people who I guess have made a lot of money, Sophie Rain, Anya Lacey, has slammed the tax, calling it ludicrous. But gubernatorial candidate Fishback wants to use that money for school lunches. And so he wants to tax the OnlyFans pornographic actors and actresses and use that money for school lunches. Now, this is being told by NXR Studios. And so he is hoping that women, he says, I don't want young women who could otherwise be mothers raising families, rearing children. I don't want them to be selling their bodies to sick men online. He says, and I don't want young, impressionable men who are straight from Christ to be told and drawn into lust and have their entire brain rewired. Now, Mr. Fishback is 31 years old. I think he's an investment company CEO. And so this is interesting, these adult stars, should they be taxed any more than anyone else? And I know this wasn't a popular opinion that I gave, but I did not like smokers getting taxed more than anybody else. I don't like it when people smoke. I think smoking is not only a health hazard to them, but to those around them. But I just didn't think it was fair that you were singling out an individual to pay more, especially since many people started their smoking habit because they did a tour of duty, or they served in the military, or they were a child of the 60s, or they're using the cigarettes to avoid drugs, to avoid food. And so to target them with, well, we're just going to tax the hell out of you because you are a population of a minority of individuals that the majority can get behind this move, that just makes me a little nervous. And so if I'm going to be consistent with how I feel about targeting, is it fair to target porn actors and make them pay 50% tax? Now, should their income be taxed? Yes, if they're making income, that income should be taxed. If they're doing illegal activity, should that stop? Yes. But for there to be a legal activity that the state allows, and then they say, look, because you're doing this and I got the majority behind me, you have to come up with 50% tax. I just, either make laws that protect individuals from pornographic imagery and pornographic sites, or I just don't think that's the most fair. And I'm kind of blown away how easy it is for now people to access such, pornographic stuff. I mean, I remember, growing up, I had brothers and, my dad and things like that. I mean, there would be, they would have to get a subscription, right, to, Playboy, or they would have to, we had On TV. I think then you could get the Playboy channel on TV. I mean, people had to put a little bit of work into it, or they had to hide their magazines from their parents. Now it's people can access this on their phones, and I understand there's supposed to be guardrails and blocked access to minors, but they're not. They're getting access. In fact, this Australia social media ban, we're hearing these kids are just lying about their age to get back on TikTok and Snapchat and other things. So these kids have access to it. Used to be a lot harder. And I like the fact that it took a little bit more work. Now there's, I think, such a tolerance to it now. Now there's so much that people are getting kind of immune. In fact, we've been talking about this in the sexual health world, where individuals are seeing so much all the time that now a relationship and intimacy is not as exciting. And so there's been many cases where people have preferred what they see on porn than their partner. And then relationships don't seem to flourish. And we have a rising younger generation of single individuals who say, I'm good. Right? I don't necessarily need to have the hassle or the expense or the, drama of having a spouse, because I'm good. I got my Pornhub, I got my OnlyFans, I got whatever I need. And I'm nervous about that. And I think it does lead to our extinctionism if we don't want to be intimate and we don't want to be close. I mean, back in World War II days, I mean, people would get married pretty quickly, very short engagement periods, because they couldn't wait to be together. They couldn't wait to have sex. They couldn't wait to start a family. Now it's, people have sex on the first date. They don't have to get married for sex anymore. They don't, it's a different world. And so, I think there is going to be these conversations of how do we approach all the, shall we say, porn online and kids' access to it. There's going to have to be, if you're an adult, you do what you want. But in terms of kids having exposure, we need to do a better job. It's interesting. Pornhub does a yearly, I think we're going to be getting yearly study. And it's a fascinating study because it talks about what people are interested in most, in terms of ethnicity, in terms of activity. And it also talks about like the time of day and the time of year. And apparently the least amount of porn that gets watched is Super Bowl Sunday and Christmas Day. And so because they could tell by people logging in. There's a lot of scientific data that you could get from your metrics. And so you're like, Super Bowl Sunday, huh? Yeah. And no wonder we see more wives go, yeah, watch football, dear. 1-877 Doc Dolly, don't go away.
Hey guys, it's Clyde. We've had a lot of requests for Ground Zero merchandise, so we put together an online store with a big variety of high-quality items. I'm really excited to let you know about these things. We have a lot to offer you and your loved ones. In addition to our regular apparel, such as t-shirts, beanies, hoodies, and hats, we've expanded our product line with posters, flags, aprons, mugs, and a whole lot more. We also have Ground Zero collectibles along with a limited edition of items like a Clyde Lewis canvas portrait, a Ground Zero embroidered jacket that will certainly make for great gifts and for interesting conversations with family and friends. And we now offer publications such as Ron Patton's book about mind control, MK Zine, and back copies of the official magazine of Ground Zero while it was in print. Paranoia, the Conspiracy Reader, also coming in 2023, are updated and revised books that I've written. There's a secure and easy-to-use shopping cart for your purchases. So shop today at our official store by going to groundzeromerch.com. Again, that's groundzeromerch.com.
Hey, America. How tired are you of mainstream corporate media's biased narratives and manipulated news? Their dishonesty and attempts to influence this generation have been exposed, put on display for anyone who's even half paying attention. But the New American Magazine has been an honest source of news and commentary for over 50 years. This is your opportunity to receive the stalwart of principled journalism at a deep discount. Picture a beautifully published magazine arriving at your doorstep twice a month, packed with insightful stories written with integrity. It's also available digitally on the New American's mobile app. Get up to speed with intelligent coverage from a freedom perspective. Right now, for a limited time, the New American is available to radio listeners at a 25% discount on a new subscription. Visit thenewamerican.com/radio25 and receive 25% off. Subscribe today at thenewamerican.com/radio25.
All right, guys, we are back on Dr. Dalia's show, 1-877-DOC-DOLLY, 1-877-DOCDALI. So I lost a colleague to multiple myeloma. Multiple myeloma is a rare and aggressive blood cancer. We can treat it, but we don't have a cure. As the second most common blood cancer in the United States, the incidence of multiple myeloma is on the rise. More than 36,000 new cases estimated to be diagnosed this year. The disease often becomes resistant to treatment, and we need to do continued research and find new options. I'm very, very happy that we have two guests with us, Dave, a multiple myeloma patient, and Dr. Robert Rifkin, hematologist-oncologist at UC Health System in Steamboat Springs, Colorado. Dave, Dr. Rifkin, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having us. We're delighted to be here on behalf of GSK.
Yes, yes, and thank you, GlaxoSmithKline, for all you do in research for this really, really difficult diagnosis. Dr. Rifkin, let's start with you. Can you talk to my listeners about multiple myeloma?
I'd be delighted to. It's the second most common blood cancer in the United States. And as you pointed out, there'll be 36,000 people diagnosed this year in the United States. But more importantly, there's over 150,000 patients living with multiple myeloma and being treated. It is a type of blood cancer that arises in the bone marrow where plasma cells can mutate. These cells can then accumulate and crowd out healthy cells, resulting in anemia. In addition, they can secrete protein that'll injure the kidneys, and finally they can weaken your bones and immune system. And just about all myeloma patients report fatigue at the time of diagnosis.
And we do have a new treatment option for multiple myeloma. Talk to us about this.
So we have a number of new treatments, but the most recent approval is for a drug called Blenrep. And when given in combination with bortezomib and dexamethasone, the FDA approved it to treat adults with multiple myeloma whose disease is relapsed or who did not respond after 2 or more treatments. Importantly, you need to talk to your healthcare provider about all of your medications and other conditions. Blenrep, the new drug, can have serious side effects, specifically eye problems, including decreased vision, are common and can be severe. So importantly, those patients taking Blenrep will need to see an eye care professional prior to the administration of each dose. Blenrep is extraordinarily active and produces deep and durable remissions. And importantly, the treatment can now be given in the community setting, so patients don't have to travel far from home to get tremendous new treatment.
You know, Dave, you've lived through this. You know, I've had patients where their first symptom was they were having some rib pain or they were having fatigue. Talk to us about your journey and how you first learned of your diagnosis.
Well, this all began innocently enough with a visit to my primary care provider for my annual physical. And during that visit, there was a blood draw done, and the next day they called me and told me I was very anemic, and they set up an appointment with an oncologist at a Boston area cancer facility, which is close to where I live. And I went in for that visit, and they drew blood. And while I was waiting for the results from that blood work, the next evening I was leaving work, and I stopped in the men's room, and on the way out, I slipped and fell, and I broke my femur, the damage to my hip. And so I now found myself in a hospital bed waiting for surgery. And while I was waiting, they informed me that I had something called multiple myeloma, and I had no idea what it was, and I'd never heard of it before. So I had the surgery, and I was released 2 days later, and I found myself back in the oncologist's office, where he explained to me just what multiple myeloma was, how serious it is, and I also had a very aggressive form of it. And my initial treatment began that same afternoon. So this all unfolded over about a 5 or 6 day period.
Wow. Changed your life. But how has treatment gone?
Treatments have been interesting, I'll say that, where this began, this journey, in December of 2018, so it's been over 7 years. And I've been fortunate to have several periods of remission. However, I've also had several relapses. And when a relapse occurs, my feelings are being disillusioned, being disappointed, but at the same time being very scared. And I say that because I know when I suffer a relapse, the current treatment plan I'm on no longer works. And that means something has to be found regarding a new treatment plan very quickly. And over the course of this 7-year period, I think it's important that we go back to this initial diagnosis where my wife and I thought our lives were going to be forever changed from the standpoint of never being able to do anything we like to do or love to do, and we just essentially be spending remaining time I had going from doctor's visit to doctor's visit, and that hasn't been the case. And I mention that because, as an example, we like to travel. And over the last few years, we went out of state. We flew out of state to my middle son's wedding. And just last fall, my wife and I went on a cooking and eating tour in Italy. And at the end of last year, along with our 3 adult boys and our daughter-in-law, we went to an island on a vacation. And we're dog lovers. So a couple of years ago, we adopted a dog. So I will say it's been difficult. Hasn't been a bed of roses, but at the same time, we've managed to do all these things that we love to do, and we've been able to live our lives at a fairly high level of normalcy.
Thank God. Thank God. You know, Dr. Rifkin, Dave, I know that we only have, I guess, a minute left before you have to go to your next interview. Dr. Rifkin, where can our listeners find out more information on some of the treatments and, Dave's story?
So clearly the first place to start is with your treating oncologist, but the Multiple Myeloma Research Foundation and International Myeloma Foundation have excellent websites with patient-facing educational material and often highlight new and upcoming treatments. Those are great resources, and really the way I look at this is education is empowerment. The more you can learn, you'll be able to pick the most effective treatment for you.
Absolutely. Dr. Rifkin, Dave, I wish you had more time to stay with us, but we can't wait to have you back. God bless, and thank you for sharing this vital information.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah, thank you very much.
1-877-DOC-DALI, 1-877-DOC-DALI. Yes, we had a colleague of ours that was tired, and it was interesting because the diagnosis, like Dave had reiterated, came on quickly. It wasn't something that, gosh, I've been struggling for a while. It was, when this hits, when blood cancer hits, it hits fast. And interestingly, sometimes the first presenting symptom is something happening to the bones. And interestingly, as David said, where he had a routine physical, not many people are getting routine physicals. They're starting to, with telemedicine, get blood work online, which is better than not, than nothing. I still like the old fashioned, let us examine you, let us ask you questions, know what to order. But at least some people are getting some basic labs, which could pick up on a lot of things. Your risk for cardiovascular disease, liver disease, renal disease, blood cancer. But a routine physical picked up on this. And then he ends up breaking his leg. And many of the patients that I've seen, their presenting symptom is a fracture because of the osteoclastic activity of that ends up happening with this cancer, where it makes holes in the bones. And in fact, we had to learn as medical students how to identify fracture types and bone pathology. And there's some pathognomonic looks to multiple myeloma on radiographs. So God bless Dave for what he's going through, and thank you, GlaxoSmithKline and Dr. Rifkin, for your great work in fighting multiple myeloma. 1-877-DOC-DALI. Don't go away. Dr. Dahlia here. Are you tired, burned out, gaining weight, succumbing to the daily pressures of life? Well, how's your dopamine doing? How you feel right now, how you'll feel an hour from now, and how you'll feel next week is completely reliant on your dopamine. Our daily motivation and willingness to push through challenges depends on the intricate chemical process dopamine provides. Christian Kalikas and I created Deploying Dopamine, a book that tells you what dopamine is, when it dysfunctions, and how to successfully deploy it when needed. Find Deploying Dopamine on Amazon today. Check it out.
Lisa Wolf here to tell you about our newest website for old-time radio lovers. It's 100radioshows.com. At this site, there are 5 old-time radio shows waiting for you to download free as our gift to you. And be sure to browse the additional 700 old-time radio shows available to you for 70% off by using the promo code RADIO at checkout. This is a limited-time offer, so log on to 100radioshows.com. That's 100radioshows.com.